Tibet is a massive region, situated right in the middle of some of the busiest airliner flight routes in Asia. But the skies above it are deserted. Why don't planes fly over this vast area? What are the airlines, or the nation that claims it, China, hiding? Could it be Shambhala, the mythical Buddhist utopia where the enlightened live in peace with each other and in harmony with nature? Well, as far as we know, Shambhala is just fiction. But there are some very good reasons the skies are empty over Tibet, and the actual reasons might be just as surprising to you. So, let's jump in and explore the real reason why planes don't fly over Tibet. Tibet, or more precisely the Tibet Autonomous Region, is located in the southwest of China, bordering Myanmar, India, Bhutan, and Nepal. It covers a vast area of almost 472,000 square miles. It's also known as the roof of the world since it's situated in the Himalayas and consists almost entirely of gigantic peaks and plateaus. The terrain here can only be described as extreme geography, and this extreme geography is the first reason why passenger flights tend to give Tibet a wide berth. The relatively level northern part, called the Qiangtan, is a high plateau that stretches more than 800 miles at an average elevation of 16,500 feet above sea level. This elevation is reason enough for planes to avoid this area, and we'll explain why a bit later on. But those are the lowlands compared to the peaks that surround the Qiangtan. To the east, the Kailash or Gangdisu range has several peaks over 20,000 feet. To the north, Mount Mushtag in the Kunlun Mountains reaches over 25,500 feet. The western and southern borders of the Plateau of Tibet are formed by the mighty Himalayas, with its highest peak, Mount Everest, situated on the Nepal-Tibet border, topping out at just over a whopping 29,000 feet. The climate in Tibet is largely dry, receiving only around 18 inches of rain and snow combined per annum. But the weather around the mountains is treacherous, fraught with frequent storms, terrible visibility, and strong winds. Wind speeds usually range between 60 and 100 miles per hour, depending on the season, but extreme winds of much greater speed and power are common as well. These unpredictable and powerful winds create extreme turbulence for planes caught in them, a major safety risk for passengers and crew. With the perpetual snowline at around 16,500 feet and much of the rugged landscape more or less completely inaccessible, the Tibetan mountains are one of the worst places in the world for a plane to go down. And if things do go down here and the pilot needs to make an emergency landing, finding a safe place to land is easier said than done. Where exactly can you even attempt to make an emergency landing when you're flying over 44 of the world's highest and most dangerous mountains? The scarcity of emergency landing options is the second major reason why airlines don't route flights over Tibet. Due to the extreme geography, this vast territory is largely uninhabited. Although in terms of area, the Tibet Autonomous Region takes up about an eighth of China's 3.7 million square miles, its population is only about 3.18 million. That's the lowest population density in any of China's provinces, at just over 1.2 people per mile. In fact, there are only 8 defined urban areas in the whole territory. Outside of the capital Lhasa, which had a population of just over 550,000 in 2020, none of these urban areas have a population of more than 100,000. For a pilot urgently looking for somewhere safe to make an emergency landing, that means there are very few airports in a very large, very remote, and very dangerous area. Within Tibet itself, there are only 5 airports, one per every 94,000 square miles. Of those, only Lhasa Gongar Airport, Tibet's main airport, and at a stretch, Shigatse Peace Airport is suitable for landing a large passenger liner like a Boeing 747. For a plane over Tibet at an average cruising speed of around 550 miles an hour, all the airports are likely to be at least half an hour away. That's an important factor, as we'll explain shortly. But what about an emergency landing on a road, you may ask? Surely, in such a sparsely populated land, there must be empty roads you could use if need be. Well, although Tibet does have 5 major highways, they're all considered to be some of the most dangerous highways in the world. On the Sichuan-Tibet Highway, for example, which runs for over 1,300 miles from Chengdu to Lhasa, drivers must contend with 99 harrowing switchbacks in just one 24-mile stretch. Then there's the regular landslides and rock avalanches, poor driving surfaces, and roads that are still under construction. And that's just the main highway in the land, the best road available. Although there are roughly 60,000 miles of rural roads in Tibet, only the most desperate pilot would attempt an emergency landing in an airliner on them. That's why, given the increased chance of an emergency due to the extreme geography and unpredictable weather, airlines choose to fly around Tibet rather than over it, even when it adds hundreds of miles to the journey. Most commercial passenger jets cruise at an altitude of 30,000 and 40,000 feet, with smaller turboprop planes cruising between 25,000 to 35,000 feet. So it's easy to understand why planes steer well clear of the jagged peaks of the Himalayas, which average 20,000 feet and higher. But why is the altitude of the Tibetan Plateau also considered too risky for passenger flights? The plateau has an average altitude of 14,750 feet. Surely it should be safe to fly over at twice the altitude for an hour or two, right? Well, under normal circumstances, sure. But what happens if things go wrong and the cabin depressurizes? Oxygen masks will immediately drop to make sure all the passengers and crew can still breathe. But they're only meant to be used for a limited time, just long enough for the pilot to descend to an altitude of 8,000 to 10,000 feet. Why 8,000 to 10,000? That's because humans can only breathe without the use of an oxygen mask at this altitude and below. Although the oxygen in some pilot and crew oxygen masks is said to last for a couple of hours, most passenger oxygen masks on commercial airliners only have enough oxygen for 10 to 15 minutes. In most places on Earth, that's more than enough time for the pilot to find somewhere to descend safely to 10,000 feet, or preferably to land. But when it comes to altitude, and frankly most other things, Tibet is different. And it's the altitude combined with icy temperatures that creates arguably the biggest safety hazard of all when flying over Tibet, and the fourth reason why planes don't fly over it. But first, why do passenger jets fly at such high altitudes in the first place? They do so for two very good reasons. Firstly, planes fly faster at that altitude. The higher you get, the lower the air pressure is, and the thinner the air becomes. This allows jet engines to produce more power and move faster because they don't need to generate as much thrust to overcome the reduced air resistance. Secondly, it's just much more cost-effective to fly at high altitudes. Because they need less power to fly faster, jets are also burning less fuel. In fact, modern jet engines, also known as turbofans, are more efficient when operating at their maximum RPM or exhaust temperature limits. So cruising through the thin air at high altitude allows planes to travel faster and burn less fuel at the same time. Except, that is, over a place like Tibet, where the plane must pass through not just thin, but freezing air for hundreds of kilometers. Freezing air creates the risk of jet fuel freezing. Standard Jet A1 fuel has a freezing point of -47 degrees Celsius, and the freezing point of Jet A fuel, which is more common in the US, is slightly higher at -40 degrees. It's rare that such temperatures are reached, let alone for long enough to freeze the fuel. Rare, that is, except in Tibet, where the risk is all too real. It's another compelling reason why planes don't fly over Tibet. But even if, knowing all of this, you still wanted to take the risk and fly over Tibet, you'd be risking a serious international incident and maybe even having the flight intercepted or shot down by the Chinese military. China imposes very serious restrictions on flights in and over Tibet. There are weekly flights from Kathmandu in Nepal to Lhasa, and around 35 flights a week from Chinese cities to and from Tibet. There are also somewhere between 40 and 100 flights per week between the other 5 Tibetan airports. But other than that, only in very rare exceptions is any commercial air traffic permitted over Tibet at all. The reasons cited by the Chinese for these strict restrictions have mostly to do with the safety risks we've already discussed. They also say, correctly, that Tibet lacks modern navigation systems, such as global positioning systems (GPS), short-range radio systems known as VOR, and instrument landing systems or ILS. This makes it difficult for pilots to navigate and maintain safe altitudes. But there's also a political angle to the restrictions. China's control over Tibet is controversial and not universally accepted within Tibet, therefore a sensitive issue. By limiting international access, even to the extent of limiting flights over Tibet, China aims to prevent political tensions and potential protests from being amplified by international media and visitors. Even without the restrictions, it's likely that nobody would fly over Tibet anyway, due to the extreme geography, hazardous weather, lack of emergency landing options, altitude, and risk of jet fuel freezing. So, if Shambhala is hidden in the Tibetan mountains, it's unlikely any of us are going to spot it through the window on a long-haul flight across Asia anytime soon. Are there any additional factors that we may have missed? Leave your thoughts in comments below. And as always, thanks for watching and take care out there.